Hey everybody, going to do a quick tutorial here on how to set up your Canon 7D. I've been getting a lot of questions on how to set up your presets and make some custom modes on your picture profile. So first thing we're going to do here is make sure your camera is in manual mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to come in and get some custom settings here that I like to set up. We're going to set up 3 different modes for custom 1, 2, and 3. Set up a photo mode, a video mode for 1080p 24, and a video mode for 720p 60. So for photo, we're going to set that up first. So like I said, make sure you're in manual mode. And I like to shoot in RAW for obvious reasons, but I take off that JPEG. If I want to use that, I can use the quick RAW JPEG button here. So quality to RAW. I like to keep my beep on. You can take that off, but it helps with autofocus to hear it snap in. Next one over, white balance. You can keep it auto white balance because once again, this is for photo mode and we're shooting RAW, so in Lightroom later on you can go ahead and tweak your white balance like you like. Picture style we're going to keep on standard for here. We'll show you how to tweak it later when we go into video settings, but once again, all these settings here are for RAW, so we can tweak those later. Once again, there's that RAW plus JPEG large that you can swap yourself. Under autofocus mode, under live view, you want to make sure this is on quick mode. I covered that in my last tutorial on the 5D Mark II, but that really helps you snap in your autofocus much quicker in video. This metering timer, you want to go from 16 seconds up to 30 minutes. When you half hold your shutter button down, it'll keep that preview up much longer for you. Next over, these are just some settings here. Highlight alert and autofocus point disable or display, you want to keep those both on disable. It kind of gets in the way unless you want to use those, but I like to keep them on disable. Auto power off to 1 minute. Auto rotate, I like to switch it over to on in this little computer icon. If you keep it with the camera, it's going to rotate the photo up and down like this instead of getting the full frame like that. So it's kind of a nice thing to do just to keep it on, and then once you get to the computer it'll automatically rotate for you. And file numbering, I like to put it on auto reset. I think it does it like every day or so. It'll reset the file numbers for you and make it easier for you to veer in your files later or name them later. Date and time, that's extremely important to make sure you have that set properly. Video system NTSC, you can go ahead and move that to PAL if you're shooting overseas, or if you want to shoot the 25 or 50 frame rates in video mode. I'm going to keep it on NTSC for this. And we'll come back to the camera user settings, but that's how we'll actually register these presets. And here's where we get into these advanced functions. 2 things I really like to set under here that'll make your photography that much easier to shoot. One thing that a lot of people miss under this first setting is come down here to the bottom right. And this is multi-controller direct, and you want to put this to enable. So you can use this little multi-controller direct button to go ahead and switch your manual focus point. If you have your spot focus point set, you can go ahead and move this around manually. I'll show you how that works in a little bit. And the other thing besides that I like to switch is over here where it's reverse direction, and I'll show you how both of those work right now. So on the top here, let me go ahead and switch my ISO to 100. Once again, like I said, I set this up all the clear settings from the default, so it comes like it would stock off the shelf. And if I half hold my shutter, you'll see now that I reverse my direction, if I move my shutter to the left, it goes to the left. If I move it to the right, it goes to the right. And that works for my aperture too. If I move my aperture to the right, it goes to the right, left, it goes to the left. So this just helps shooting in manual mode a lot easier to dial in. So you don't have to really sometimes think about, your equivalent exposures. You can just go ahead and rotate to the left or right, and it'll go ahead and get that into the center for you. So that's a really handy tip. The other thing I was showing you before is you want to make sure under this quick button here, that'll get you into this setting where you can actually switch your autofocus points. So I want to go ahead and rotate this over to manual select single point autofocus. Now that that's actually enabled like that, if I click in here, this is what it would actually look like inside of the viewfinder here. If you have hold the shutter when you're shooting photos, you'll be able to move your manual or your focus point around just by using your controller direct instead of having to push the button first and then going. And the cool thing to know about this is if you're on the side, if you hold in the center and click straight down, it'll go back to the center. So I'm over here and click back to the center, it'll go back to the center. So you want to make sure that that's in the center. A couple things on the top here. My metering is set properly. If I come under my autofocus drive, you have one shot and AI server are the two that I use the most. One shot, you can go ahead and half hold your shutter, get your focus point, it'll beep. Then you can go ahead and quickly reframe if you'd like to get your snap off your photo. That's for portraits and static shots. Then you have for high action and sports, you have an AI servo, which will actually track, and you can move your autofocus point around and they'll still track the subject for you. So on default, I like to keep it on one shot. The other thing is if I rotate my aperture wheel down here, I can go from one shot to continuous high to continuous, then you have your self timers. I like to keep it on continuous. That gives you about your 4 frames a second. Continuous high gives you about your 8 frames a second. So that's set up. I think I'm ready to go ahead and make my preset for my photo. So what I want to do is come back under my menu and come over to camera user setting. Go ahead and click in the center there and I'll register this as C1. Go ahead and click OK, and now my custom dial 1 on the top is set to photo. So that's what I want. That way I don't mess around with my settings when I go to video mode. So I'm going to set up C2 and C3 for both my video modes. The only thing I really have to worry about changing here for video is getting my shutter speed right and getting my picture style and some advanced settings. So picture style, I want to thank Stu Maskowitz for this. This is off his blog on how to flatten your 5D. And you can obviously with your 7D. There's other ways you can really get advanced with this by going into your computer, but this is a quick, easy way to get it in camera. So I want to come down here to my user define 1 setting, and I want to click the info button, and I want to change this to neutral. Come down, you see that's all the way down at the far left. I want to bring this one all the way to the left too. It's my contrast. My saturation I want to bring 2 stops down to there. So that's all set up properly. I want to come back and back one more. Make sure that's on user define 1. You see why I set my photo first, because I don't want to flatten out my photos because I can do that with RAW and post. But this is for video. Since it compresses to your H.264, you want to go ahead and knock this out in the camera so you don't have really blacks and you can't get that filmic look out of it in post. So the other thing I want to do is come under the image and come down to highlight tone priority, and I want to go from disable to enable. And this is something that you don't always want to keep, but for the majority of the time it does a great job at flattening out your image. There's certain times where it might get some more noise and low light and things like that, so play around with it, but by default I go ahead and turn that on. You see once I turn that on, it automatically makes my ISO 200, so I can't go lower than that. But if I swap over into my video mode here and I click in menu, now I have some more settings, and I want to go ahead and set my movie record size to 1920 by 1080 at 24 frames a second, and this is going to be my custom preset too. Now that I'm at 24 frames a second, I want to get my shutter speed as close to 50th as I can. So with this camera, you can only get 1/50th. Normally you want 1/48 shutter, but that's the closest I can get, and that, like I said, follows the 180 degree rule. You never want to do a greater than 180 degree rule. You end up with kind of this motion blurry look to your video, and it will look like video, not like film. You can go less than 180 degrees and kind of gives the Saving Private Ryan effect if you're up 125 or 1/160th, things like that. But those are creative things. The standard is 1/50th. Well, 1/48th, but 1/50th for here. And go ahead and open up your aperture as wide as it can go. This is a 1.2 lens, so I can go ahead and default it to 1.2 and keep my ISO 200. And so now that that's all set up for 24 frames a second, I can go ahead and make a preset. So whenever I swap into this mode, I'm ready to go and shoot. So come back to my camera user settings, register this as mode dial C2 and click OK. And then lastly, I'm going to set up my 1280 by 720 at 60. And 60 frames a second, you want your shutter speed to be as close to 1/120th, but this only goes to 1/125th. So that's as close as I can get as 1/125th. All the other settings are good to go. And now that let's double check, make sure I'm at 1280 by 60. And the cool thing about this overcranking is when you use Final Cut, you can go into Cinema Tools and conform it all to 23.976 on the fly, and everything will look just like it should. And you have a good shutter speed in order to get good motion blur out of it. So I come into Menu, go down to Camera User Settings, and register this as C3. Click OK. And now, if you look on the top, if I want to shoot photo, I can go to C1. And you see I'm an ISO 100, so it didn't put in all those extra settings. And my picture profile set, and I'm shooting raw. Go to C2, automatically pops into 1/50th. And I got my highlight tone priority on there. And my settings, if you come under Menu, you'll see my picture settings are at the neutral settings that we set up, just like we like them. And if I go to C3, I'm at click on quick mode just so you can check. Oops, gotta swap that over. Go to quick mode, you'll see I'm at 1280 by 720 at 60 frames a second, and I'm at 1/125th shutter, just like I want. So C1, C2, and C3, very handy to go ahead and shoot stuff. So that's how I set up my 7D, and you can do a lot of this with your 5D Mark II as well. With your picture profile, you just can't do the 24 frames a second yet. Hopefully they'll come with that firmware update soon. And one more thing I want to show everybody real quick is kind of a hack that I found out. I mean, it's not really a hack, but it's a nice addition to the 7D that the 5D Mark II doesn't have. If I come back into like a clip here, and if I come in here, you have some editing features, kind of like the iPhone, but this is really handy if you want to go ahead and set an in point and out point and then show a client a certain section. But what's really cool is you have no way to fast forward in the 5D. If you ever felt the pain of doing this frame by frame by frame, that's the only way you can really fast forward through a clip in the past. Well, now you go to then cut the beginning. You can use this joystick up here, and if you just fast forward, it's going to go ahead and fast forward through that clip. And if you hold back on this dial, I'm just holding on the dial and I'm holding it down, it'll go ahead and rewind. And so that's a really quick way to get through a clip instead of having to go frame by frame. And you can go and cut the beginning and then go to cut the end and bring this back. It takes a while to get going, and then it goes pretty quick. Go ahead and cut the end. And the cool thing is you can go ahead and save this as a new file or overwrite, but you can go ahead and extract this as a new file. It's going to go ahead and through and make a brand new file out of that. So when you pretty much edit in the camera if you want to subclip your shots up. So it's a very handy way to go ahead and fast forward, rewind, and subclip in the camera. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Thanks, and hope that helped.